Hey there guys, Spud here, and today we're taking a look at the very basics of the new DTC system and interface for the new Heatblur F-14B Tomcat. This video will go over the very bare bones basics to help ensure you get up and running on day one release of the BU. In this video, we're going to start in the mission editor and cover the DCS DTC system as a whole and F-14BU specifics such as the Navigational Cartridge Partition, Preplanned JDAM Cartridge Partition, and the Countermeasures Dispensing System, or CMDS Partition. We'll be making a separate video on the tactical imaging system because it gets a little more complicated. Once we have our Data Cartridge built, we're then going to jump into the cockpit of our F-14BU and take a look at how all of our DTC options look from the front seat, and show off just how powerful and integral the DTC system is in our new modernized Tomcat. I think you'll find that once again, Heatblur has really hit it out of the park, especially with this very potentially complicated system. But unfortunately guys, before we get started, I gotta do the cringe YouTuber thing. More than 70% of you guys watching aren't actually subscribed to my channel, and if you could, that would really help me and the channel out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Alright guys, thank you for joining me back here in the mission editor once again. Like I said in the intro, today's video is all about giving you guys the basic skills you'll need to jump in and utilize the DTC interface on day one release of the F-14BU. For our example today, we've got a relatively simple loadout on our Tomcat, a couple of AIM-9 Mike Sidewinders, and AIM-7 Papa Sparrow, 4 GBU-38 JDAMs in the tunnel, and of course a Lantern targeting pod. For our example mission today, we've been assigned a DAD tasking to attack and destroy the SA-3 battery defending Tios airfield here on the Syria map. Before we started recording, I did a little bit of preliminary work and created a very simple flight plan allowing us to navigate through the map, find our target, and then head back home to home plate. We can see we've got our air start point here, an ingress point just after, JDAM IP point, target point, egress point, and some additional waypoints that'll bring us back home to home plate at Ramat David. This preliminary simple flight plan we created here in the mission editor will become more relevant down the road as we actually start to build out our DTC cartridge. To create a new data cartridge here in the DCS mission editor, all we need to do is come up to the top left side of the mission editor panel, hit the edit tab, and come down to the last option labeled DTC Manager. You can also open this menu by default hitting Ctrl and D on your keyboard. Now, thanks to some recent additions and changes to the DTC menus by Eagle Dynamics, I find it's a heck of a lot easier to use now. To create a new data cartridge, all we need to do is hit the large plus icon here, ensure you have the correct aircraft type selected, and then I always recommend giving it a very easily recognizable name so you don't lose it in all of the DTCs you may have exported to your saved games folder or other DTCs you're creating for other aircraft in your large multiplayer mission. So we'll label this one F-14BU DTC Tutorial 1. Hitting OK will populate all of the different options available for the data cartridge in the F-14BU. We'll start off here in the Navigational tab up here in the top left. The initial portion of the Navigational tab here deals with your flight plans. These are essentially the main flight plans you'll use to navigate across the map, find targets, make your way back home to home plate, things of that nature. Now, you can have up to 8 different main flight plans, each consisting of up to 50 different waypoints. However, I believe that 99% of players in DCS will utilize the by default flight plan number 1, which just simply loads up all of the waypoints you created in the DCS mission editor, just like we've done with every DCS aircraft since the inception of Digital Combat Simulator. However, I think there will be some good niche options for, say, scripted campaigns, such as those created by like Baltic Dragon, to have a few different flight plans that the RIO or pilot must choose accordingly for different contingencies, such as pop-up targets, pop-up threats, or potentially not being able to make it home back to home plate and having to land at an additional airbase. Things of that nature. So moving down from that, we'll skip adding too much to this. We'll just use that by default mission editor route. Coming down to plot lines. Plot lines are very cool because it essentially allows us to draw on our PTID display or see that drawing on the PTID repeater in the front seat. This will allow us to, say, draw lines for different threats, like creating threat rings for SAM sites, like we will here today, and outlining different airspace restrictions, such as outlining the box around Groom Lake, so that way we don't inadvertently fly over Area 51 and get sent home from Red Flag. This will also be good for, say, drawing out the FIBA or maybe even tanker tracks, things of that nature that can definitely help you out and give you better situational awareness. Now, the first option here for plot lines is use route as first line. I'm going to tick that box, and that's essentially going to draw a nice line showing us where our flight plan is actually going across the PTID. This will be great for, say, if we have to start dodging an SA-3 that shot at us today, we can get ourselves back onto our flight plan pretty quickly and easily without having to mess too much with Jester in the back seat or ask our RIO to select the appropriate waypoint. Again, just giving us just a little bit more situational awareness. Next, let's go ahead and add in some plot points here to give us a good threat ring around the SA-3 site we're going to attack, so that way we know when we're potentially going to get fired upon by the SAM site. So in order to actually get our threat ring from the SA-3 site popped up onto our map here, I'm going to hit pan map mode, and I'm going to click on the SA-3 to populate its threat ring on our mission editor map here. And then I'm going to go back to plot lines and hit add line, place points. I'm just going to sloppily put a couple of waypoints here. There we go, and a nice box around the SA-3. And then I'm also going to hit the checkbox for closed to make a nice closed square here on our mission editor. I'm then going to go to edit/drag mode in order to make these plot points look a little bit nicer. You'll also notice here that we don't have an actually perfect box around our SA-3 site here. And that's because we're trying to put a flat object on top of a round Earth map that's here in DCS World. However, it will look just fine on the PTID and won't hinder your ability to actually use it for situational awareness. Next, once we have our plot lines set and ready to go, we can add some additional points here. For our additional points, we're going to create some actual specific lantern waypoints, so that way we can snap our lantern right to different points around our target. Zooming into our target area here, our initial additional point will place right on top of our SA-3 battery. Now, we'll have to ensure that we put in the correct waypoint suffix name in order to make it work correctly within the DTC of our Tomcat and ensure it becomes a lantern-specific waypoint. We can see a bit of a cheat sheet right here in order to help us out. So for today, we're going to name it SA-3XL, and the XL suffix there, as we can see right down here for lantern, is going to allow it to become that lantern-specific waypoint. You can of course definitely take an in-depth look at this and ensure you're doing it correctly by bringing up the manual for the F-14BU. Next, in order to give us a little bit of increased situational awareness, maybe we'll plop another lantern waypoint on the ramp area here, so that way we can see if there's any MiGs that are potentially scrambling out to intercept us. So we'll add another one here, and we'll call this one RMP for Ramp XL, and that will create a second lantern-specific waypoint that will allow us to snap that lantern pod right there onto the ramp of Tios Airfield. Perfect. With that out of the way now, we're ready to actually start putting together our pre-planned JDAM missions. So we'll come up to the JDAM tab up here. We'll scroll out and come back down towards our target SA-3 site. and we can see a whole long list of different available slots for pre-planned JDAM missions. This interface here is probably the most confusing part of using the DTC interface in the F-14BU. I was initially confused because I put my 4 pre-planned JDAM missions in 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. However, that is definitely a gotcha because this will only load 4 different missions that you can choose from for Station 3 for the particular JDAM on Station 3. So if you only need 4 JDAM missions for your 4 bombs, you need to ensure that you scroll down and use 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, and 6-1. For Station 3, the first pre-planned target for Station 3, we'll place that right on top of the radar van of our SA-3 site. For our drop altitude, let's set 22,000 feet. And for our drop speed, let's put it to 475 knots. Next, we'll ensure that we navigate to Station 4, pre-planned target number 1, and we will place that on the map. Let's put it on top of the SA-3 launcher just over here. Again, we will set our drop altitude of 22,000 feet and a drop speed of 475 knots. We'll repeat this for Station 5, pre-planned target number 1. Place on the map on top of this SA-3 launcher. Again, drop altitude of 22,000 feet and a launch airspeed of 475 knots. And then why don't we place the last station pre-planned target on top of this SA-3 launcher off to the west. Again, we're going to go with 22,000 feet for our drop altitude and 475 knots. As we zoom out, we're going to start to see our launch acceptable range cones drawn out on the map here. At this point, we can now drag for our final attack heading and move the launch acceptable range cone around. So why don't we go ahead and bring this over here to match up with our flight plan from our JDAM IP point on inbound to our target. We'll repeat this for all 4 of our pre-planned JDAM missions. And we can see attack heading is now mirrored down here as we drag the launch acceptable range cone around the mission editor map here. Now we also have 4 additional waypoints that we can drag around and that will show up on our PTID as the launch points for our JDAMs. The order of drop for the stations is Station 3 first, then Station 4, followed by Station 5, and finally Station 6. So we've got those in a nice little string here coming through across our flight plan and for our drop onto our SA-3 target. Go ahead and drag these just a little bit, make them a little bit more precise, and match up just a hair better to our flight plan. And we'll be able to see these waypoints on our PTID, which is definitely pretty cool. It's also really cool and important to note here that these launch acceptable range cones that are going to be drawn on our PTID are dynamic, and they do change based off of the altitude and airspeed you have set for the drop point. So if we were to say do something crazy like set 800 knots here, we can see that the launch acceptable range cone here has expanded by quite a bit. But that's definitely a bit not very realistic here. So let's go ahead and reset 475, and we will bring our Station 6 point back up right here, right in the line of our drop points. So that's going to be perfect there for our JDAM pre-planned targets. And let's go over to our Countermeasures Dispensers tab. We of course, like all ALE-47 equipped aircraft, have a number of programs we can set. But again, for about 95% of players that are out there, the one that you're really going to be interested in is going to be the Pilot Reactive, or Program 8 here. This is going to be the program that's going to be released when you press the DLC toggle / countermeasures release button on your stick. For me, my default go-to program that I use for basically everything and every aircraft in DCS is a burst quantity of 5 chaff and 5 flares, a burst interval of 0.25 on both my chaff and flares, a salvo quantity of 1, so only 1 burst comes out with each press of my Countermeasures Dispense button, and salvo interval doesn't matter as a result because I'm only going to do 1 salvo. We can also adjust our bingo, at which point our countermeasure systems will let us know we're getting low on chaff and flares. You can adjust that to your desire. And just like any other ALE-47 equipped aircraft, we can set the ALE-47 to manual mode, semi-automatic mode, and automatic mode. And this is what our auto-program defaults will be for different threats such as SAMs, AAA aircraft, naval, and unknown threats. Now, I highly recommend you only have your ALE-47 set to manual mode or semi-automatic mode. Having it set to automatic mode can waste your countermeasures way faster than you would have anticipated, and you might be caught in the open with a MiG on your 6 and no flares left when you didn't even realize it. So just be very careful with automatic mode with your ALE-47. The next program that you're probably going to want to adjust is your Jester reactive program. This is going to be the same thing that we just talked about for pilot reactive, but for Jester in the back seat. And it's also what your panic button for your Rio is also going to dispense as well. I recommend leaving these to the default burst quantity of 1 and 1, so again, Jester isn't back there just wasting all of your countermeasures when you're not expecting it. So just keep that in mind there. And then of course you can adjust programs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to your heart's content. Do keep in mind here in the F-14BU, really the only thing you have control over in terms of actually dispensing chaff and flares from your aircraft is going to be that pilot reactive program 8. That DLC toggle countermeasures release button on your stick. TIS is going to be your tactical imagery system, but we'll go over that in a separate video because it gets a little bit complicated. Okay, now that we have everything set up and ready to rock and roll, we need to save our DTC file by hitting the check mark here. And if you've already previously saved it and then changed some things, make sure you definitely overwrite. And now it's time to load our DTC file into our actual aircraft. We're going to hit the F-16 icon with the little downward facing arrow there. We will ensure that we have the correct DTC cartridge set, the correct group DTC test jet, and the correct unit that we want it to be set to. We'll go ahead and hit add, and now we are ready to rock and roll and jump into the aircraft and demonstrate all of this stuff and what it looks like from the front seat of our F-14BU. Okay guys, once you've loaded into your mission or multiplayer server and you've reached the briefing screen here, you're now ready to load up your new DTC file into your aircraft. Please keep in mind, this is the same process whether you're doing an air start, a ground hot start, or a ground cold start. All we need to do is just hit the Open DTC button here in order to open up the DTC in mission or in-game menu. Ensure that you have the appropriate DTC file selected, or upload it from your saved games folder if you previously exported it, and then crucially ensure you always hit the load button here to load all this information into your aircraft. And then I recommend that you do a bit of a look-see through your DTC options here to ensure everything is set up as you expect it. Cool, everything is looking good. We can now close the DTC menu here, hit the fly button, and we'll do a little bit of cockpit setup here in order to then be able to go through all of the options we set up through the DTC interface. For now, we'll go ahead and get rid of the pilot body. We'll go to air to ground master mode. We'll bring up the PTID repeater, turn off ECM override, bring up the video option on the VDI. We'll render the stick invisible here. We'll ensure that we select our GBU 38s.
Copy.
Set up the fusing for our GBU 38s. And finally, we will bring master arm to the arm position. Now, looking down, at our PTID repeater here on the HSD, we can see everything we set up in the DTC interface. From the plot lines, we have a beautiful, nice graphical representation of our flight plan flying across the map. We also have a fantastic looking threat ring around our SA3 site here. We can also see our launch acceptable cones for our JDAMs. And if we zoom in our PTID just slightly here, we can see that we have our launch points for our 4 JDAMs as well. Okay, so now let's also check our LANTIRN waypoints that we set up as well. So we'll go to set Q mode, Q waypoint, and we'll go to LTS1.
Roger that.
And we can see that we've now snapped to LTS1. And this looks to be like we have snapped right to that SA3 site, just like we set up in the mission editor there through the DTC interface. And now let's go to the ramp point that we set up to see if we can see any MiGs that may be on the airfield. We can now see it snapped to the ramp area, and we're still a little bit too far out to see anything parked on that ramp area. So let's snap it back to our waypoint we created for our SA3. Alright, so of course we've just masked the pod, because of course the pod is on our right hand side and our target is off to the left. Now another thing to take note of is for the set Q mode of the LANTIRN pod, we can also set it to all of the pre-planned targets that we have set up in our aircraft here. So those should all be set and ready to go for us.
At 10 o'clock.
So as we get closer to waypoint 2, why don't we go ahead and climb up to 22,000 feet. And we will accelerate up to 475 knots to match the JDAM drop parameters that we had set for our launch acceptable cones here in the DTC. Now, of course, this is a horseshoes and hand grenades kind of thing. If you're higher and faster than what your original parameters were set to, you should be just fine and your JDAMs will be able to hit the target. This is more for minimums than it is for maximums, if that makes any sense. Alright, so we'll start to come back off to the left-hand side here a little bit. There's 22,000 feet coming on over towards our first waypoint. And we'll go ahead and accelerate here as well. We'll do the final bit of acceleration out further towards our target area, just so that way we're not wasting too much gas. And you'll probably pretty much be periodically hearing me turn on and off the automatic flight control system or autopilot here in the F-14BU. I have done that always in the F-14 ever since the F-14B first released, and it just tends to work out pretty well for me. The auto-sequencing of the CDNU has auto-sequenced us to our next flight plan point, which is going to be waypoint 3, our target point. And we can see our pod is no longer masked, and it's snapped right back to our special LANTIRN waypoint, right on top of our target area. And in our HUD here, we can see our pre-planned JDAM triangles, as well as the inverted triangle showing us where our LANTIRN pod is currently looking. We have a time to max launch range of 1 minute. We'll start to speed up to match our JDAM drop parameters set in our DTC.
Right on our nose, 12 o'clock.
That's the SA-3.
You got it.
Jester will turn on our jammer.
Finger on the nose.
Alright, it's engaging us, so we'll go ahead and drop a little bit out of parameters here, and we'll go defensive.
Okay, let's do this. SAM launch, 11 o'clock low. Hot, brake right.
Sorry, Jester, I broke left. Alright, I saw a detonation of one of the SAMs. There's the second one. And at this point, we'll just stick around a little bit here to do a bit of BDA. We now have the target firmly off of our right-hand side now, so we shouldn't be masking our pod anytime soon.
Wilco, 10 seconds TTI.
And we dropped our weapons a little bit further out than we originally intended to, so it'll probably be a couple more seconds here. Impact. Impact. That's 2, 3, and 4. Boom. Good shacks on that SA-3 site for sure. And it was all thanks to the new DTC interface system for the F-14BU. So guys, I hope this tutorial gives you a basic overview of the new DTC system and allows you to have the basic skills you need to jump in and use the new system right away on day one of release of the F-14BU. So guys, if you liked the video, please give a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and enjoy this beautiful game. We'll see you in the next one.